Okay, let's get started. So, thanks for coming, everyone. This is our first Parents' Night of the year. It got postponed, so thanks for being flexible and being able to show up tonight. I'm Ben. I'm a staff. All of you probably know that, but we're going to go around and introduce the staff, and then if everybody could just say your name and your child's name, and maybe, yeah, let's just keep it short. Name and who your kid is. I'm Ben. My kids are Lucy and Tommy.
I'm Vanessa. I have no children.
But Vanessa's a staff.
I'm a staff.
She's a rando. She knows snacks.
I'm Carrie. I'm staff, but we also have two children here, Laura and Herbie.
I'm Matt, and the same, Herbie and Laura.
My name's Alyssa. I'm not staff. I have two kids, Ulysses, who's 8, and Aurelia, who's 6 here.
My name's Eli, and I am staff.
I'm Kate, and my kids are Finley and Liam on their visiting week. So.
I'm Carolyn, and my kids are Emma and Jack.
I'm Rocco, this is Karen, and we have Blake, who's first year this year.
I'm Emily, and this is my husband Pico, and we have two kiddos here, Brielle and Sylvan.
I go by Fox, and my son is Lee.
I'm Abby, son is Paul, and my husband is here.
I'm Lane, I have Benny this year, and CJ's an alum. It's weird to not include her.
I'm Andrea, it's my husband Chris, and we have our daughter, who's 15.
I'm Missy, and that guy sitting next to James is my son Levi. Better known as the dude.
Who knows who I
I'm Megan, and I have 3 children here. Maria, Harry, and Thomas. Maria's 13, Harry's almost 11, and Thomas is 7.
I'm Joe, and this is my wife, Tiffany, and I have one kid here named Ollie.
I'm Margaret, and I have 2 kids. Caroline is 15, and Julia's 12. Oh, and this is my husband, Bill.
Anahita, mom number 1 of Amelia and Lara, and they're almost 7.
I'm Gabby, my son is Roger.
I'm Fernanda, mom number 2 of Amelia Meyer.
Katie, this is Martin, and our kid is August.
I'm Alana, and this is my husband Eric, and our son is Torin, and then we also have a mom.
Okay, then. Oh, gosh.
I'm James, I'm on staff.
I'm Levi, and this is my daughter, Annie.
I'm Annabelle, and I'm a member here. I'm Laura.
I'm Mara, and I'm a member.
So, I guess I thought this could be sort of an informal discussion. I grew up at a place where it was very unconventional like this. It was self-directed education, and the staff, who was sort of the spokesperson, would get up at a podium with a suit and give an hour-long lecture about self-directed education. His parents didn't really talk to each other, they just all sat facing him. Then they asked some questions and then went home. So I always thought, I'll do something very different. So I think, the staff here have amazing insights and interesting things to say about the kids and how things go here. And tonight we even have some older members who offered to answer questions. In particular, they offered to answer questions about their experience last year preparing for college courses. All 4 of you did those, right. And then there were a bunch of other friends of theirs who also went through that but couldn't be here tonight. But some of these kids, Laura has been here since she was 4 and a half.
4 3/4.
4 and 3/4. Mara, you've been here since you were 7. So what I wanted to kind of start the conversation out on is kind of what it looks like to grow up here from an early age, from a young age, and then continue through with this form of education all the way to this period of teenagehood where you're starting to think about like, what's next? How am I going to prepare for work or college or whatever I want to do? And what that looks like from the perspective of self-directed education. We've always had families here, we've always had members here who were more on the kind of homeschool end of the spectrum, who did some kind of formal academic work at home, and also came here. Sometimes they'd end up around middle school or high school, going to more conventional school, or kids who had kind of gotten the basics in school when they were younger and then came here to be a little bit more self-directed in their later years. But as someone who grew up this way myself, kind of from beginning to end, purely self-directed, I always felt that was a really special and unique experience that I hoped could be passed on, you know, to other kids and other families with this center. So it was interesting last year when we saw a pretty large group of kids who had been here, like really adhering to the self-directed model of education from a young age, and then deciding on their own to go into a kind of formal academic regimen together. And it wasn't a surprise to me to see that, because I've seen, I think in 40 years, it's been about 40 years since I started in my self-directed education. So I think I must have seen hundreds of kids at this point do this. Go from playing all day and playing all day as they get older and playing all day into their teenagehood, and then all of a sudden one day, just as their parents thought like, oh my God, what have I done? All of a sudden they get on the train and it's like, you know, you weren't sure they were really gonna make it. And I mean, I don't think they had any doubt, and I had no doubt, but for some parents who had kind of never seen this happen, maybe they had read about it or they had heard about it, and even had some trust in children's innate capacity to do that, they were still a little bit, there's still that doubt. Sometimes more with your own kid than other kids. Well, yeah, those kids probably have it together, brother. I don't know about my kid. And that's kind of how it is for me. You know, it's a common experience, I think. Even though I've seen it happen hundreds of times, it's like you've taken care of this young child from the beginning and sort of done everything for them, and you're just like, it's hard to imagine that all of a sudden they'll be able to do that.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying. So last year, I think it was a relief maybe for some parents who I had personally been saying for years, like, it'll happen.
We've been saying this to new parents.
And not that it always has to happen like that. I mean, you know, it could happen, like for me it happened when I was in my 20s. I didn't decide to go to college until I was in my 20s. And before that, it's not like I was preparing for college. I was just living my life. I prepared to go to college about 3 weeks before I went to college. And some kids, of course, don't go to college. Probably more and more in the future, kids will not go to college for a whole range of reasons. But this seems to be kind of a stumbling block for a lot of parents. They want to know, not necessarily be guaranteed that their kid is going to go to college. Of course, when you try something this far out, you're open to alternatives, you're open to your child's trajectory being unconventional. But you want to know that it's not going to close any doors, that if they choose to go to college, that won't be foreclosed on because of the decision you made to try this. And so I think this past year, was kind of another indication that yes, this works, for people who hadn't really seen it before. So maybe we could start the conversation by, you could ask some of these kids about their experience. I've asked them about their experience already a lot because I wrote a little blog about it, and I asked them about their experience a lot in that process. So they're used to answering questions about it. They have a lot of interesting things to say. And also Carrie, who worked with them through that process, has that experience and some insight into that. Or if you have kind of personal burning questions about, we can talk about anything, but I guess I thought that would be a good way to kind of focus the conversation and get things started.
What if we, I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
Yeah,
What would be the-
Please.
Well, I'm
I
interested in what you should say.
I just have a question for him.
Sure.
So I'm curious, from the perspective of the child, were you forced into this sort of unconventional education path? And if so, did you question it? What did you question about it? And did you have a change of heart eventually? In other words, do you see that this was the best route for you? I know there's a couple questions there, but I think you understand what I am asking.
So like about homeschooling?
Yeah, like,
Since I came here when I was 4, I didn't really know what I was doing. It was kind of just like, okay, we're going here now. When I got older, I had thought a little bit about going to public school because I kind of wanted a little bit of structure and and my parents were always like, if you want to, really want to, you can. But eventually I was like, all my friends are here. I don't really want to go, so I stayed here and I've never really doubted it. It's ended up working really well for me and I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, I agree.
thank you.
Technically, you were forced. Yeah.
I would have reluctantly let you go. I'd be really impressed for it.
I have a question then for you guys. Do you remember what made you want to do the studying? Do you remember the moment that you were like, oh, you went from playing all day to, oh, I want to go to college, or I want to do this? What are your stories at that? Do you remember, was there a moment there? Because you weren't doing anything for a long time, and then...
I take a moment to think about that, because I want to add, with Mara, our experience was that our oldest son was here as well for a few years, and then he decided he wanted a bigger pool of kids, and so he decided he wants to go to public school.
In 8th grade.
In 8th grade. He also, before coming here in Michigan, he had an IEP, that's an individualized education plan, and so we thought, okay, shoot, what are we going to do? So we went back and we did the testing and all of that kind of stuff. He did not qualify for an IEP or a 504. A 504 is the next step up, giving accommodations. And he went to 8th grade. But in the process, Mara was coming up to 6th grade and he was going to go into 8th grade. And so we wanted him to try and go to Macomber. It's a charter school, and so it's by lottery. So we put their name in the pool. Mara got in. And so we talked about the fact that, it's an opportunity for you to explore. And so in that regard, she can talk about the fact that I think she felt a little forced because like, oh, your brother is going. He didn't get in. He was on a waiting list. He got in 2 months later. But we went through the whole process of seeing what that is, and so if you want, you can speak about that, how that felt for you.
Does that go with the original question though? I don't want to like mess up Matt's question.
I think it's gonna tie into that.
I think when I first started like when you first explored like the idea of going to a different place, I just felt really overwhelmed because I had always like kind of been here for so long, and obviously I loved all my friends, and I just don't think I wanted that kind of like structure in my life because I was just so used to, if I want to do something, you know, I'm gonna go do it, and I don't feel like the pressure of like having to have stuff done by deadlines or that kind of thing. And so I don't know, I'm really glad I didn't go. I mean, I did go to like the visiting day or something, and I just felt like kind of trapped. I was like, oh, I don't like this. And I also like the idea of like a small community. It makes me feel more comfortable because I know everybody and everyone knows everybody. So it's like, oh, I'm comfortable with these people, I know everybody here. But going back to like Matt's question, I think for me personally, I'd always kind of thought about doing like a college class or like a class at some point in the future because I wanted to experience it, because I wanted to try like the standardized testing or that kind of thing, because I knew I would need to in the future at some point if I wanted to do like a job or whatever. So I think it was kind of like abrupt at that moment, but I had been thinking about it for a while, so it wasn't like a super huge change for me. For me, it was like I had always wanted to do some sort of learning or eventually take a class, but I was very bad at getting myself to do stuff at the center, especially with all my friends. I'm like, well, I could hang out with my friends instead of learning. So I would always pick and hang out with my friends, but then once we started doing it as a group, that kind of like got me to do it, because then my friends were doing it as well. So it was like, okay, well, you know, there's nothing else to do. I've always wanted to start doing some learning, so it was a really great way for me to start learning with my friends.
Doing it as a group was really helpful, because then you're like, oh, then I know that they're not doing something so much more fun without me. So we're all doing it together.
I just want to point out, for those of you who didn't read my recent blog post, which
raise your hands.
I know almost all of you read my blog post when but you'll already know this if you did, but these kids, I mean, Laura, I don't think you really ever, I'm pretty sure you were never told like you have to do a little bit of this every morning, or we want you to read this book, or and when you started last year, you were basically where anybody would be with math who had like literally never done any, right?
I knew some like very basics.
Right, and you placed after a few months of academic preparation, which was all self-imposed. You placed above or at or be above.
A little above.
Yeah, grade level, which is something that a lot of people, you know, even when kids come here for 2 years, even if a parent will often say, well, he was doing okay in 6th grade, but you know, wasn't enjoying it, but if he decides to go back into school in a year or two, will he be behind? Which to me is an absurd question when you look at somebody like Laura, who literally never did any of that stuff until she was 14, right? And then, so just so people understand, like kind of, you know, it's not just like that you decided to kind of start dabbling, like you actually did a lot of really concentrated work in a very short period of time, placed in the college course, and now you're taking a college course and doing really well from what I understand. And the 3 of you are, right? Same?
And Levi.
Okay.
Yeah. I took the test, but I didn't do super well, and I just really like realized how I'm still really young, and I wasn't really ready to like do college stuff anyway. So I have a few more years.
Like, is this a hand-raising situation? I'm not sure.
Yeah, raising hands, yes.
Like, raising my
We don't
hand,
want it
but also,
totally
like,
to
I don't-
devolve like into just.
When you guys decided to pursue some more academics, what was helpful? It has been obviously a very long time since I've been in college. What was helpful for you guys in making that transition? And obviously Roger's very far away from this, but I'm just kind of curious of like what the environment is for you and like what sort of tools and support your adults are giving you or that you want from adults.
I'm not really sure.
I actually have a question that goes right with that, kind of the same thing. Did any of you guys do anything outside of the center on your own, like online? You guys, like, what did you do other than we're gonna sit here in the center together and work on this map?
I did math. I still do math tutoring. I do a lot of stuff at home still,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I've done some like workbooks and stuff. Sometimes I would do those like online with my friends, like I would FaceTime with my friends and we would do that online together. But other than that, nothing much really until we started preparing to take the Ackie Placer to get into college, and then we would do it like every day at the center with everybody.
Yeah.
I did nothing.
And Herbie too, nothing.
Yeah.
But I keep hearing you say like you did nothing and then you started studying math. You were not doing nothing.
No, okay, right.
You were doing tons of things that teach you math. You just didn't take pencil to paper until recently.
Yes, we
correct?
did. We took no classes, but I mean, we're still learning everything from just by being in the world.
I have a question for you. In the center, there is a really strong community and a lot of support here and close connections with your friends. That's obvious. In your interactions out in the world, for yourselves as teens, have you felt strong enough to stand and hold your place when other people question the kind of education that you guys have? I guess I'm wondering how you respond to the majority of the world who doesn't necessarily follow this path, and how you guys feel about it in that way.
I'm fairly good at like when someone starts like, you know, questioning it in like a sort of like looking down on it sort of thing. That's the type of thing where I'm good at talking back at that. Like, I'm not worried about what they'll think of me because I don't care what they think of me anymore because they already seem stupid to me. So I'll just like, that's easy for me to talk to them. Talking to like people I don't know, just like going up and asking questions, that's where I get like scared to talk. But, you know, I can still do it. But with that sort of thing, I don't mind talking back.
Yeah, I think in the past I felt like sometimes if I had friends who like were in public school and I was coming here, they'd be like, so like what do you do? Do you just like do nothing all day? You know, I wish I had the luxury of just doing nothing. I'd be like, you know, I'm not doing nothing, you know, I'm still learning just by being here. I'm learning like social skills, I'm learning all that, which are actually like important skills you need in life instead of just, you know, sitting at a desk doing a test which you're gonna forget. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I have felt a little bit insecure being like, oh wait, am I like behind, or like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that instead? Should I know all these things that I feel like all these kids know and I don't? But in the end, I'm really glad that I chose like this path. Like, I feel like it's really helped me. Levi, you should talk.
I think from my perspective as someone who's kind of new to it, I've only been here I think 2.5 years or so. I think that when someone is wondering about it, I don't feel inclined to think that they're being that they're looking down on it, because I feel like most people just don't understand it because it's not presented to most people very often. I feel like most people just need information on it because it's not very commonly known. So I would just generally you know, like, try to help them understand, and if they think that's not their type of thing, I think that's fine. Like, it's kind of depends on the person, I guess.
I'd like to, from the perspective of a self-directed learner myself, maybe also answer your question. I think for myself and a lot of the people I grew up with, I remember this being a phenomenon that, you know, you grow up in this very kind of fringe community. I mean, it's not like, I hope it's not like a cult or anything. Sometimes it feels like a cult in a good way. But like the kids here know. They're not stupid. They know that this is outside the mainstream, like way outside the mainstream. They're aware of that, even at 5 years old, I think. So, and it's comfortable. They love it here. They feel very at home and comfortable. But they're always aware that there's this kind of, and when they're in, as they get older, as we get older, as one gets older and goes into college or work, there's a kind of self-consciousness about that and a real determination to kind of show that you're not a freak, that you aren't lacking essential skills, that you're just as good at accomplishing important tasks as anybody else. And often they excel, often we excel. I'm talking about myself as this strange species, that we tend to excel at things because we kind of feel like, no, look, I'm not deficient. Abby's shaking her head. She's a grown unschooler as well, who I know from talking to her, I'll just out her, that she went through, like, you know, all the conventional steps of higher education and career. And I think this is a thing. I don't know if that gets at your question. That was from my perspective.
But I'd like to differentiate a little bit by hearing you. I'm glad you said that, because when you did it, it was more of an outlier scenario, much more of an outlier scenario. I was going to chime in and say, I have seen these kids talk to strangers about what they do, about what their upbringing is. And like when they're talking to a stranger, I hover about 5 feet away and watch. And I love it, of course. But I've seen Laura do it, I've seen Kate do it, I've seen Caroline do it. They represent themselves really well. And what I wanted to say was, I don't know that they have the chip on their shoulder anymore. Like when I see them do this, I see kind of a well-grounded human being like, or I'm about to, like, they know they're in a special environment, but they also know why they're here, and they know what they're learning from it, and to be a centered human being. Like, that's what I see when I see them talk to an adult. I see this, like I've seen Laura do it, just like, this is what I do, this is how I do it. And even though, as an adult, I see the other adult being, questioning or, doubtful about what this child is saying, but the kids, the teenagers here, because I think it's more prevalent in society because of maybe COVID, and because there are so many kids here, they're less about, I'm a weirdo, and they're more like, this is how I am. And not only is this how I am, I'm better than you.
I was gonna say, I think for our kids, we have to be careful they don't go too much in the other direction with their cousins and stuff.
Right.
Be like, God, that sucks, guys. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, please don't beat on their schooling, okay? They're respectful about how you school. You have to be respectful about how they school. Because our boys are definitely like, the other way's not good.
Well, I was wondering if some of the parents that have been around for a while, so to me it's two different contexts. There's the kids, and Ellie just started last year, but I've already seen that. I've already seen her talking to her normie friends or whatever. And it's not a big deal. She's just like, yeah, it's awesome. You know, and then they laugh about it and they're like, that's weird, and they move on. But having not been here that long, I've already had some really kind of sideways conversations with family members and complete strangers that I felt the judgment, like, what are you doing as a parent of a kid? Like, what? And so, like, if anyone has any insight into how to handle those situations without, like, losing it.
That is so common. That is a whole parent's night.
Different way.
How you walk that line. Really, we could talk about it for a long time, so we probably shouldn't, but we have, I mean, you asked this question last time. And we'll talk to you about it afterwards, and go up to parents that you know have done it a while, because you're literally on the edge of indicting them by saying what you're doing. It is a tough line to walk. But yeah, so everyone has experience with this.
From your kid, I've seen Mara and Annabelle hold their own with a family friend who constantly, every single year we see her, and every single time I talk to her, it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're messing their lives. And they held up their, Annabelle in particular, I loved how she answered, because she's like, oh, so what do you do at school? And Annabelle was like, I go to a center. And she's like, oh, okay, I love that you do that. And so she put her in her place in a very nice way, and then they had a different kind of conversation. So I would take your cue from them, and your little one as well, because I've watched them growing here, and we've learned a lot more from how they responded to the world than us as parents, because they'll be like, okay, I'm done my child.
You guys also have one kid in school, and our families here have one kid in school and one kid here.
We're a blended family. We
Yeah.
have one kid.
But you're not wrong.
I feel like from a 7-year-old, like obviously like the conversation that a 7-year-old brings is not the same as they, but he definitely, like Roger has the same attitude as you do. Like when we go out in public, like when we went to go vote, or like when we're out and it's the middle of the day and somebody's like, why aren't you in school? He's like, I homeschool. And then we have also had the conversation that Alana has had, where he's been like, oh yeah, you know, a friend will ask why he's not in school, and he's like, school sucks, man. His default, like, I feel self-conscious sometimes. It's usually just when I know that somebody's not willing to meet me halfway and understand what we're doing, or when they're passing judgments immediately, then it's immediately like, I don't even want to have this conversation with you. But when somebody is willing to meet me halfway, then it's a lot of conversations, and I take a lot of cues from Roger when he's like, dude, I'm just here. I just want to live my life. His default, I think Ben, he said this in front of you once, is like, I don't want someone to teach me, is what his default response is.
All kids feel that way.
Yeah, he's just very blunt about it. He's
So,
like,
don't say it.
Man. Yeah.
But I think going back to, how do you walk that conversation, and it can be a plethora of things. It's weird if you make it weird. So, if someone's coming at you with something and you have that adverse response, it's gonna get weird. Or I'm gonna keep that light and we can move it on. Am I gonna change your mind? No, it's just gonna keep on moving. So I think you have to judge each conversation. But I did have, thank you for the 4 of you for coming. And thank you, Ben, for chipping in. And I know, James, you've gone down this before. I had I'm backing up to the bigger picture, because I can get stuck in the weeds. What am I doing? One kid's reading, one kid's not. Where did people find their passion of learning to learn? And I know you're still in progress, and we all are in the progress of doing that. And I've been in public school my whole life. We've had a combination of different things, but regardless of how you've approached learning, where did you find that spark, or where do you continue to find that spark? I like getting lost in the library. I like getting lost in conversations. Where do you find those sparks?
I guess, talking about it with friends is really fun.
Yeah, really through friends here.
Yeah.
Keeps me going.
Certain things that, it's mainly just what you're interested in. Math sucks. Don't want to do it.
I love math.
But we're in the psychology class, and that's very interesting. So, but it's all about what you're interested in, and being able to talk about it with friends, and just knowing that you know stuff is really cool.
Yeah, finding something you're interested in and then being like, you know what, I want to learn all about that. I feel like that's really fun. Because if you just want to learn things that, or you feel like you need to learn things that you're not interested in, you're just not going to have that much fun with it. So if you find something that you are interested in, then I feel like it's a lot of fun.
I feel like on that point, sorry. I feel like on that point too, the things that I found our kids do deep dives into are not always necessarily what would be on a curriculum, but they're like really cool things and they get super into it. Who was I talking to about Pokemon recently? Right here? I don't, anyway, but like, I remember when my kids went through the Pokemon thing, and the encyclopedic knowledge that they would have and recall of every kind of 500 cards in their collection. I mean, that's real learning. It's just, you wouldn't have a Pokemon class in elementary school, I don't know why. But like, right, and I think sometimes as adults, especially coming from normie education, the impetus to be like, yeah, but that's not real, or like, that's not important. What's important is, you know, like, whatever Civil War thing you had to memorize in middle school, I don't know. But to them, it's super important, and it's triggering it's all the same. It's in your brain. It's all the same mechanisms. It's all the same things that are getting fired and learning to work and you know, strengthening the muscle of interest and learning and all of those things. It's just that we tend to, adults in general, tend to put value on certain things and not other things.
I can't believe you brought up Pokemon, because I was going to say exactly the same thing. Because
Pokemon's awesome.
Because I know that Yuli is really into Pokemon right now, and I remember when my son, when he was really little, was super into Pokemon. Like many parents, when my son was about 3, we were convinced that he was a super genius. I meet a lot of parents now who think their kids are super geniuses. I mean, they are. But like all kids are super geniuses. But the way he would create these taxonomies, and he had this folder and all the evolves of each species and all the characteristics. And you were doing a class on last year on like how to categorize things. And they're doing all that stuff. And, you know, adults can look at it and say, well, you're learning, you know, like in the old days, it was baseball cards. Who cares how many home runs he has? You know, you should be learning about Abraham Lincoln or whatever. But if he was learning about Abraham Lincoln, he wouldn't be learning to love learning. And when he's learning about Pokemon, he's learning what it feels like to really master a subject. And he's falling in love with that feeling. And that's what makes him like a super learner in the future.
And what you're seeing is learning unhindered and unburdened by a lifetime of you know, arc or yeah, this is what it is. And this is what it looks like. It's like, oh, I'm interested in this, and I'm going to go look at this. And everything is important. And it's not like, oh, I like this, but this is an unimportant thing, like baseball cards or things. So that's kind of when I see them, that's kind of what I see, is I see just, this is what learning looks like when you leave it alone.
I think there's like a level of self-confidence and like self-esteem that kids who grow up in this environment have too. And I think that's a lot of what's so important about letting kids kind of direct their own learning. And then you end up with these kids who are so well-spoken and can hold their own when people are kind of doubting the type of educational path that they or their families have chosen. And that's like, when I interviewed here last year, that's like the first thing I noticed about the teenagers here. I was just like, oh my gosh, like they're asking me questions about myself. Like they're just like very engaged and like, just, I mean, the social skills and like the confidence to be able to speak with adults when you've been in an environment where you've been like respected as a human being makes such a huge difference, and I think is something that like is, I mean, just absolutely invaluable to grow up with.
There's three questions in the queue. So first, Anahita.
I love that my question is coming at this time, because everything I'm hearing is exactly what, you know, we wanted for the girls, like to keep their love of learning alive, because every one of us was born as a curious being. I'm not worried about content. content will come later. I'm not interested in pushing agenda, whatever. I am, however, you know, I guess I have a very specific question about reading.
Yes.
I know, Carrie, you talked a little bit about this before. I'd love to hear more because, you know, as you know, both the girls were here last year. Now one of them's in public school just because she did need more structure, and that seems to be working well for her. And just trying to find the right balance of keeping hands off, but also feeling like a whole world of more self-directed education and opportunities would open up to her if she were able to read. I'm hung up on a little bit because that it's like she can learn anything if she knows how to read. So at what yeah, go.
We have the same anxiety. We have the same anxieties because Herbie was initially in Montessori. He was reading very early and loved reading. Laura, on the other hand, was not, and she did not want to be taught to read.
She was proud that she couldn't read.
Yeah, for a long time. Look, reading is a process, right? It's a very slow process, and it's hard to see what's going on and when they're at, like, I just didn't have any insight. 'Cause anytime I tried to teach her to read, or, you know, she'd ask me how to spell something, I'd be like, well, that starts with so what letters with that? She'd be like, Mom, just tell me. And she did not want to have anything to do with it. As soon as you push, she would push back and I would lose it. So I couldn't do anything but watch, and I couldn't tell what she was learning for a very long time until, and we're talking, what would you say, Laura? When would, I want to hear you talk about this.
At least 10 before I started to read.
Right, you were starting to read earlier, but being able to read at a level where I didn't need to read subtitles to anymore was like 10 maybe, was what I was thinking the other day. But she was learning through texting, how were you learning, do you think most?
I think I mainly learned how to read by signs on sides of roads and just like everyday things that I came into contact with. I still couldn't write for a while, and that started I think around when I was 11, 12, because I started texting, and texting I would start using the speech thing, and then I just eventually learned basic words, and then just from there I was able to write all the stuff. But when it came to reading, I was like, I learned from signs, and then...
And from Duolingo. She was learning Spanish, but I swear you were learning more English trying to do the Spanish. I don't know why she got into, what sparked your interest in Duolingo and Spanish. But don't you think?
Yes, that's a funny story with that, is that when I was learning to read English at the same time I was learning Spanish. So sometimes right now, if I'm trying to write a word, like I know what I'm trying to write, I'll start writing the Spanish version of it because I'll be like, I was trying to write jacket, right? And I knew what it is. I know how to spell both once. But I started to write the CH, and then I was like, wait, that's not how you spell jacket. I was writing the Spanish version because I learned them both at the same time.
Yeah. And I remember I ran a spelling bee one year, and you entered, all kids from 5 up to 18 were doing the spelling bee, and so I would tailor each question or each word towards the person. I had no idea what to give Laura, so I was giving her very easy words, and so surprised when you could actually spell them. I was like, how did she learn this? I don't know, but she had been reading, and now every other week we're at the library, and she's an avid reading. You've got
how many books you got going right now?
I think I'm currently reading 3, and then I've got like at least 5 series that are just like I'm waiting.
Right.
I've never come in and seen you like not reading.
Right. So it's a matter of
But I had the same concern. I'm like, but she could be learning so much more if she was able to read right now. But she was learning what she needed at the time.
She wasn't ready.
And she was learning other things.
I feel like what you said about she needs to be able to read to open up these opportunities, I feel like that is an expectation that public school has put on us. Because public school must get 30 kids reading ASAP so that they can teach them. It's learn to read and read to learn. That is not necessarily developmentally appropriate, because what I've read is that it's completely normal for some kids to take till 11 or 12 years old to learn how to read.
It's true.
And we're freaking out. They're not reading at first grade.
I'm not really worried about that. that, it really comes down to each individual kid. Our girls are twins, and they're as different as they could be, and I want different things for them because I am trying to follow their lead, and that's what all of this is about. So I don't really care about that, it's just that she has such great questions, you know, so, and I just feel like she would be able to do more of what she wants to do, I think, right? And I'm trying to
She'll probably be motivated.
That's exactly it, and I want to make sure that that intrinsic motivation to learn, which is the #1 reason I so wholeheartedly embrace this model, even though I did not grow up with it, is because that is so rare in this world, and I want that for her. So I just want to make sure, I guess, like, I am still new to this, and there is still like a critical period of like learning how to read bind certain sounds together, and just kind of like, I don't care if it's, some kids don't even go to school in Europe until they're 7. It doesn't matter to me the numbers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that like,
It's the process.
it's the
She has all the, yeah.
yes,
Well, so, because our kids are really close in
Yeah.
age, and I know Vanessa was actually the one who taught my kid his first, like, letter sounds. Thanks, Vanessa. But vehemently opposed to reading. If you look at him and you're like, can you read this sign, he will probably use an expletive and walk, or just like look you in the eye and walk away.
Hazard was the first word.
Yeah.
That,
Well, yes.
hazard, he wanted to know how to write hazard.
Yeah.
He became like obsessed with that
So,
word, yeah.
I know he knows how to read, and he
Yeah.
can read independently, but if you ask him to do it, he'll tell you to screw off. But
Right.
he is in a lot of programs, and as far as I've noticed, like, I have not actually, I didn't make this connection until you said this, of being like, how can he be in those programs without knowing how to read? He's in like a coding class, they talk about Minecraft, I don't know. They write things on the board, and there are words, and now that you're saying this, I'm like, how does he know how to do that? So obviously he knows how to read, but I don't think he knew how to do that beforehand, so I think that holding them back because we don't think that they can do it is interesting. I would just dump her in the program and be like, if you want to learn how to read, you're going to figure it out. Because she will. She'll totally rise to the occasion.
yeah, she does Minecraft and asks like,
There you
how do
go.
you spell such and such?
I don't
Looking
know.
for such and such.
I don't know how to play
But-
Minecraft.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather err on the side of not imposing anything because I so don't want to step over that boundary. At the same time, you know, like we all just want to make sure they have the tools. It's just like, you also don't know what you don't know when you're that young. So striking that balance is hard.
Well, and sometimes it's really nice for like for them to realize, like, I don't know if any of you could speak to this, but like to realize something that you don't know in your own skin instead of having your parents be like, well, you don't know that yet. Because I'm like, I don't know what Roger doesn't know. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I don't know if any of you have that experience, especially now that you're in like this academic setting of being like, you have this whole new, I'm sure like this whole new view of things that maybe you don't know about that as an adult every day.
I'm not sure about that, but I can say that the other thing is like, since when they tried to get me to read, it just made me want to not read more. So I was learning to read through everything, but I didn't want to be like taught. The more they tried to teach me, the more I was like, I don't want to. So
This is the world they live in. Like, they're gonna wanna read because they're gonna wanna see what the older kids are reading. Like, the older kids are gonna, I wanna do that, and I wanna do this. Like, so it'll happen naturally. Like, your question, your fear is a real one, but it's based in, like, for her age. Like, yeah, everybody has this question. You even said that too, and your children are very young too. Like, you're afraid they're not gonna learn to read because, oh my God, at this age. That's all imposed. That's all imposed, right? And it is too, but it's a real thing, because that's like one of the litmus things, right? Everyone wants to know when they're gonna read and if they're gonna go to college. Those are the two big things. And
Don't I see these little kids climbing all over, like Juliet's group of kids and their iPads?
Yeah.
They're on
Yeah.
their iPads,
Yeah.
and there's a little kid here. Looking over their shoulder. You know there's a lot of text on that. You know, they're texting friends and.
It's such a unique situation as to have twins, and one's probably coming home with sight words, and
Yes.
it's just like, that's a very unique,
Yeah.
and you've got them kind of right next to each other, so that's gonna be a
And they have
challenge.
their own personalities and,
Yeah.
right, those social factors that we're not necessarily supposed to be bringing to the table, like my friends were learning, so I want to learn, my sister's learning, so I might want to learn.
Right.
We don't know, we're gonna just.
I don't wanna cut off, oh, sorry.
Like, I have a 9-year-old, or an almost 9-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and my 9-year-old has very recently started reading, and all of a sudden, my 5-year-old is like on it. And just knowing that her sister can do it, she wants to do it too. And she's kind of at the point right now of just like memorizing books, but she'll point to each word as she reads it and slowly go along. And so I think, like, process-wise, I think just having someone else, whether it's a friend or a sibling, can be really helpful in that they're gonna follow in some form when they're ready. Yeah.
I just want to make sure we get to every question. So did you have your hand up?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah, so I'm curious, it's a question for you guys. When you were preparing for your test, there were probably some things you had to study that you weren't intrinsically interested in, but you just had to do it to place on the test. What was that like? Can you speak to that?
I guess because I wanted to do the test and I wanted to, it's like, I didn't necessarily want to learn all about this stuff, but I mean, to get to what I wanted to do, I had to. So it wasn't like, I didn't like hate it, but I mean, I didn't love it, but like, it was like, okay, well, I gotta do it to get to
I felt the same way. Like, it was kind of like the end goal and like the little bits. Like some of the stuff, like I don't necessarily enjoy math very much, but I knew that once I learned it, I'd be able to take the test and I'd be able to get to the part maybe getting into a college class. So yeah.
Another thing is, even though I don't enjoy math very much, it was very fun being able to learn it from Mara. Because me and Mara were at the very similar levels when it came to math. So being able to talk to her about it made it that much more fun.
Yeah.
So I didn't like math, but I liked doing it with Mara.
Yeah, that was really fun. I also found it fun getting help from friends with math for sure. Like Levi would help me, Herbie would help me, and then the staff would help me. It was just a fun experience, and they really encouraged me to like keep going.
This speaks to one of the questions, sorry, that often adults ask, or even I guess I question, like, you know, going to school. Something people say all the time is to like a negative of this way of growing up is, well, how will you do something if you don't
want to do it?
Yeah, if you don't want to do it, how are they going to learn? You know, in life there are things you need to do that you just, you know, you just have to do. How are they going to? Are they going to be able to do those things? But once it's their goal, then absolutely they'll be able
They
to
do it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
They have a goal,
Yeah.
and they go through the unpleasant things to get to the goal.
Yeah.
There's so much of that in life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
want to cook myself breakfast, but I want to eat breakfast.
Right. Exactly.
Precisely.
I just want to add a little bit to that, because I remember driving them to their first class, and the go-to in math is the picking up. And they're all so nervous. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. We don't want to be late. And we were almost late because the traffic was an accident. So like all the things that could possibly go wrong went wrong all the way. And they were so nervous. What's going to happen? What are we going to do? And then they got there, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but it was like, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
So the conversations afterwards were really rich and really a lot of fun. You guys can speak to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I was definitely like terrified because I'd never been in a classroom like that, and I was worried I was not going to understand anything. I was completely lost, and then I'm gonna be like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But it really wasn't like that, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting, and I had a lot of fun just like knowing that like Laura was there, and then Kate was there, and like we were doing it together, and we kind of were all experiencing that. I thought it was cool.
For what it's worth, like going to regular classes for 16 years of my life, you feel like that sometimes anyway. What am I doing in here? What's happening? I'm lost.
I finished an undergraduate degree and immediately went to graduate school and felt the exact same way.
Abby? Oh.
Sorry, no, I just want to add on to Mara's thing is, like, yes, it was terrifying going into the class. I was shaking, literally. But afterwards, we just got to, like, we literally sat outside for, like, 30 minutes, I think, afterwards, and just talked about it the entire time, and what we thought was interesting, and what we enjoyed about it. And it just, like, we were scared, but we did it, and it was fun, and
it felt really like rewarding after you did it. You're like, yeah, I actually can do that.
Abby?
Yeah, so this is for Levi. were you in a traditional school setting before coming here?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually completed like 8th grade before I came here,
Okay,
so I'm
because
pretty
I'm
good.
very curious about like the experience of going to a traditional school, deciding to come here, and then deciding that you want to take on more structured academics again. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the difference in that experience between like being in the school situation that you had to be in versus.
Yeah, I think it's kind of about the mix. Like, I was definitely not a fan of public school, which is why I left and came here. And then I kind of like took a while to adjust, and once I did, I kind of felt that I should do more academic stuff, and so I did. And now that I'm like now that I'm going to a place where I feel like safe and I can relax and talk to my friends and stuff, doing the class is like much easier, I guess, for me. It's unstressful, and I can like control what I'm learning about or how much I'm learning, so I can like tweak it if it's becoming a problem, I guess.
Yes, Christian.
I had a question that came to me as you were talking, Annabelle, about how you felt supported and you got help from your friends. And I contrast that to the typical environment in public school where I don't think that happens a whole lot, because kids, particularly teenagers, it's more about, I don't know, standing out, being the cool person, being mean to those who are not like you. It's more that environment that's not healthy for learning or even for social well-being, and how different that is from what you have here. And I particularly wanted to ask you, Levi, since you went through 8th grade even at a public school, can you speak to that difference of the environment, like the things outside of learning that happen on a daily basis here versus in your old school?
Yeah, I feel like in traditional high school or just public school in general, it's either they don't know how to help you because they're as confused as they are and no one else is willing to help them, or they like just don't feel like it and aren't courteous enough to help you.
Yeah.
Or they're just having a rough day or something. Or they like help you but are like kind of rude about it because they want to, I don't know, feel good about themselves, especially in the younger ages, and with particular people, especially in the older ages too, I guess. I don't know.
Can I also say, I taught in conventional school for many years, and one thing I also noticed was in conventional school, the incentive structure is to be done. So much more often, someone would just give someone a pay, here, have my answers, or, because they already did if I knew the answers, and Ben's coming to ask me questions, I'm done. I don't have any incentive to go back in and try to think about this more. Whereas it seems with you all, the incentive amongst the group and the individual is supposed to understand what was going on. So,
great point.
I also wanted to mention about like the supportiveness of the community and the staff, and not like since I was behind or not at the level where typical high school students would be, it felt really nice that I didn't feel like I could ask any question and I didn't feel judged for where I was compared to other people. It was really nice to be able to ask from people and you don't feel judged. I know the staff were very much like, this is just ask any question. You're not judged at all. So that was really nice. There was so much support and not feeling bad about where you were.
Can I ask a Capricorn? Oh, go ahead. With something.
I found something so beautiful about that, where it seems to me that you can choose how you build those foundations, and there's not a gap in feeling stupid for not knowing something. You can go back a little bit and fill in that brick and have something to stand on. So I just found that really beautiful, because I've been a product of the complete opposite. I've gone to Boston Latin, where it is vicious and you're ranked against your peers. You're not supposed to help each other out. You're all failing or succeeding, but it's a completely different environment, and it made me not want to learn. I learned how to read at a normal 5-year-old age in public school, but I didn't want to read for a long time because I was forced to read so much. So seeing all this foundation work and the sparks just make me really happy. So thank you for that.
Yeah, if I can just really quickly speak to that too.
I also went to Macomber Center, and I also was raised self-directed, and that foundation was pivotal for me going to college, because it was not only helpful for me, but helpful for my professors to have me basically saying, like, I don't know what an essay outline is, or I've never done a presentation before, how do you do that? Like, it begs the question, like, it challenges their assumptions of what everybody knows. And the willingness to admit that and just ask the question, as well as how much more effectively we communicate with adults, having been treated like actual human beings, it makes all the difference when you're pursuing learning, and when you're pursuing higher education in particular, but just life in general, I think.
Yeah. Bill?
Do you guys feel a lot of pressure, either external or internal, to get good grades?
Yes, but it's all internal.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. I don't know, I feel like high expectations of myself. So like if I were to fail, I would feel very like disappointed in myself, because I feel like I would not be, I don't know, smart enough or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, it's not external, it's definitely not. Nobody's like telling me you have to get good grades. It's all me. I'm like, I have to get good grades. I'm not even sure why. It's probably not very healthy.
I also, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Another thing is, like, yes, it's nothing external. Like, honestly, all the staff are telling me that this experience is not about learning, like, psychology or whatever. It's about learning how to learn in this environment. And as much as I know that, I'm kind of like, it's like proving to yourself that you can do it. And it's horrifying, but we're doing really well, and it makes me feel good.
Yeah, agreed.
I just, to Bill's question, this is a kind of, like, self-directed learners are notorious in this way. Growing up at the school that I did, I think I have probably more accumulated experience of this kind of thing from there as a child as I do with this. Because a lot of the by the time a lot of these kids go to college, I'm not in much contact with them. They're doing it while they're still here, so I'm hearing these stories. But it was always kind of a phenomenon that everybody was aware of, that when you left that kind of school and you went to college, you didn't, like, it was all A's. Self-directed learners just kind of can't bear to get anything less than an A. I was like this. I don't think I ever got anything less than an A. I don't remember in college ever getting anything less than an A. It wasn't like I was there to, like, get the degree and move on, and, like, as long as I had a certain average, it was okay. I was there to, like, suck the marrow out of every book and every professor, and to make sure that I learned it, like, thoroughly. And when we had we had a group of kids last year who were all visiting their families for Christmas break, but they had been off to college for a few years. And they came back and they were telling us all about their college experiences. And they echoed this. They were like, you know, even if basically that they were like, they had extremely high standards for themselves, and the other kids had kind of learned how to weave in and
how to work the system.
Yeah,
This was they felt very different than their peers who were there to do minimum amount of work to get it done, to move on to, like, you know, I guess they had their goal of getting their degree and but they weren't necessarily there to learn the material.
And they all said, like, all the other students would just leave, and they would be like, wait, there's the professor. That's the person with the knowledge that I want. And they would go down and talk to them. 201.
Yeah.
Like, that was how they felt different, is they accessed the information, because they were there for the information, not for the degree, per se.
Yeah, and sometimes for a particular professor, I had professors at Tufts, I was like a groupie. But they only had one groupie, and that was me. But I would talk to them at the end of class until they started politely, you know, and then I would walk them to their office, and then they would open the door, and I would come in and sit down and keep talking. But I thought it was incredible that, you know, you paid this, it was expensive, but at least you had unlimited access to these incredible people who had all this information that you were there to get. And like, how could you not take complete advantage of that? Meanwhile, I was appalled by my fellow students who'd show up in their slippers, chewing bubble gum, sitting there like this, you know, in the class, like, who's making you be here? Anyway, yes, Abby.
Well, and I was gonna say, as someone who was also self-directed, who then took a more traditional route through higher education, I started out, and my mom told me very explicitly, she goes, aim for B's and expect C's. And I got straight A's because I didn't know what it looked like to aim for a B. And to my mind, I'm given this work, I do the work. Like, that's the point of being here, right? So, and I think from that stance, like once you start out and you're just kind of absorbing it all, it's hard to stop. I don't know how else to say it. And then eventually, it also turned into, well, I've gotten straight A's so far, so now I can't get into
The obsessive.
I was just gonna say that the experience, at least with Mara, was that yes, she was very dedicated. She's like, I'm just gonna study. And we never told them about study groups or anything like that. So then I was just told, hey, I'm gonna be at Laura's because we're gonna do a study group. And I'm like, what? Okay, fine. Oh, I'm taking the textbook with me because we're gonna study at Macomber. And so they organized all of that. She was very worried about not being able to write appropriately. So we just did, like, I remember James, you talked about how you learned how to write an essay. And so it was like a 5-minute thing. Oh, Emma, this is how you go, and this is, you do it like this, and double space, and, oh, okay, this is how you do it, fine, okay. So it took 5 minutes. So she learned a lot of that stuff, and I remember when she came home and she said, we stopped us after class, and she asked us, how do we study? Because the professor told them that the 3 15-year-olds are the top in the world. Oh my God, how do you study? Tell us, what is your secret? And his mother was like, well, do it.
We're not trained yet.
It has been amazing to watch this. We did not tell them how to take a class. They went to class, and Laura's often coming home, well, tonight I gotta say, I like to read ahead of time, because when I read ahead of time, then when I go into the class, I understand what he's saying, and I can just listen and take it in and understand it. I mean, she sets her own schedule. I do think it's great that they're only doing one class, they're starting with just one class. It's allowing them to figure out how to learn, how to take a class, how to take notes, and to prepare for class and quizzes.
And she has reverse pressure. Come on, Laura, one Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
We watch a show tonight,
we watch a show, one more show. You don't need to study.
It's true.
But it really shouldn't be a surprise, if you look at the 6 and 7-year-olds around here, the way they live their lives, that's what they're doing.
Yes.
They're like 110% in everything they do. We can't keep up with them. I don't follow them down there to see what they're doing. They come in here, they run into the art room, they're grabbing stuff, they're talking to each other, getting things from dragging each other down there. They're living these rich lives, and this is what it looks like when they get older. They bring that into the next thing they want to do.
And all the alumni did say that one of the things that set them apart from everybody else was they could manage their own time, like seamlessly. Like this is because they've been doing it their whole lives. The young kids do it. The 12-year-olds do it. They do it. They manage their own time. I got to do this, and this is when I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this. Whereas that's how they felt different from the other kids at the college. Is that those kids didn't, because it was so managed for them for their whole lives.
I wanted to add, having a kid who went to public school, we were all freaking out because at 4.5 he was diagnosed with autism. I'm like, we don't know what we're doing. Okay, public school. Until 2nd grade. 3rd grade to 7th grade, he was here. Well, 3rd grade, Sudbury Valley, and then here. And then public school. So now he's a junior in high school. And so seeing the different ways of learning, we strongly believe that the time that he was here was, I
cannot even use big enough words, instrumental in his ability to learn how to socialize. That was his challenge. High end of the spectrum, right? His challenge was socializing. He absorbed it all. He studied it. He learned that. That was his focus. And so then he ended up in 8th grade being at the top of the class, taking honors classes and being recommended for honors classes in high school. Then he went a little bit downhill because, again, he absorbed the culture in high school. And seeing the groups of teenagers, because we have a group of teenagers coming from Mara's group, coming to our house, seeing how they socialize and how comfortable they are with the adults, and then seeing our son's teenagers come to the house and they literally put themselves to jail in his room. Like, that's how they learn how to socialize. Yeah, they're like, oh, and when they saw that I'm an actual human being and I can talk to them and it's okay, and they started relaxing, but they socialize in a different way. And now he's coming around and saying, well, you know what? I think that I want to be my own individual, and what the school is giving me is not matching who I truly am. And so even if they're here for a little bit, it makes a difference, at least in our experience. And so I don't know, Mara, if you want to talk about that as a sibling, seeing his struggles.
I don't know. I think you've said enough.
We have to move to another the socializing part now. I was going to ask a Capra question, just a quick Capra question to the four of you. Now that you've gone from that, done this, been successful, how do you feel about it? Like, how do you feel about yourselves? Like, do you, like, because Herbie wanted me to give an answer to the group for this question. He actually came to me and said, can you tell everybody, and you guys can answer as well. He said, I don't feel afraid anymore. I don't feel afraid I'm going to be behind. I don't feel afraid that I'm not going to be able to learn.
And Herbie's not taking a class,
He's
but
not.
he did the preparation last year.
And he placed, he just chose not to because he wasn't ready, didn't want to.
But he realized
he could.
Yeah, even in that process, all the kids, less than half of the kids that went through it chose to do a class this year, but they realized they could learn very quickly. They could take the test, they could place into it, and now if they want to, they can.
Do you guys feel that confidence? Like, do you actually feel it? Or?
Yeah. I think, barely. I mean, I think I just need to be done with the class first, or at least this one. I did good.
We've still got finals.
I'm nervous about that.
I feel good about certain things and things that I'm interested in. I'm a little worried about math because I don't super enjoy math. I don't feel like I comprehend it as well as some of the other people that are around me, like Herbie, and just but I could if I wanted to. I could really start learning, and I do want to, but again, I would rather hang out with my friends. But with everything, I want to do biology at some point. We're doing psychology, things that I'm interested in. If I want to do something, I can, and I know that.
Thank you guys for being put on the spot like this. We really appreciate it, and thanks everybody. We still have some time left, so you sort of know each other's names. If everyone memorized everyone's names, walk to each other and say hello. Have some cookies. There's whole bags of cookies over there. Me and Matt are just going to eat them if you guys don't. So, and yeah, we'll just kind of hang out and talk. You can come to the staff, ask us questions, talk with these kids more.
If you have any more questions, you're happy to answer them. Yeah, sure.
But feel free to get up and mingle, and then we'll end it at around 9 o'clock.
Adjourned.
None of this will be on the test.